Hey everyone, this is Christopher Luxon, the former CEO of Air New Zealand.
This is John Lee Dumas, the founder and host of Entrepreneurs on Fire.
This is Tracy Ibarra. I'm in Executive Solutions at Dell Technologies.
This is Travis Chappell, founder of Build Your Network. If you are wanting to learn how to embrace change,
To navigate through disruption as a leader,
then listen to the Leadership is Changing podcast.
The Leadership is Changing podcast.
the Leadership is Changing podcast with my good friend,
my very good friend, Denis Giannoutsos.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Denis Giannoutsos.
Yeah, I guess my background in terms of leadership came as an evolution that I got to travel as part of that cricket commitment, and I got to work in summer camps in New York between cricket seasons in New Zealand and overseas. And I got to play in Canada for a season and has combined that with coaching professionally. And I've had a lot of people management experiences and a lot of international experiences, and coming into this role at Rower New Zealand, which is a high performance focus, where our crews are across 7 or 8 countries every year. It's a very interesting mix when you talk about leadership and experiences.
Yeah, wow. And tell me, so, okay, you've done these, you've had these experiences where you've got a lot of people management and leadership experience. Tell me, how did you actually get into leadership?
Yeah, I started in that coaching role as quite a young professional coach, and coaching sport, no matter what your sport and no matter what you're coaching, it is a people-focused role. It's not the technical or tactical that you're focused on. You're focused on the person. And cricket's a fantastic game that people talk about as a team game, but actually it's 11 individuals against 2 individuals when you're batting, and the other way around when you're fielding. So there's an individual component around communication and leadership that then morphs itself into the wider team coaching role. So I started my leadership evolution with that focus. And yes, I did all the certificates. I did the level 1s and 2s and 3s, and I did all the technical and tactical stuff. But in the end, you are a people leader when you're a coach, and you get good people around you to help you with that leadership. And then I formed my leadership career through going into management at a middle management layer. And again, because it was sports management was just a nice passion to be involved with. It didn't change the fact that you had to relate with people face to face, not over email, not technical, not gross profit, net profit, not tax, GST requirements as we have here in New Zealand, but actually people management issues. And so my leadership as it sits today was based on the foundation of working with and dealing with people from the outset.
Yeah, and you mentioned before, Simon, that getting good people around you. For our listeners here, how important is it to get good people around you, and what could you do to help get good people around you?
Well, the best leaders do that first and foremost. You get your experts in your technical fields that you need in a business sense around finance and HR and marketing and comms and all those things that your listeners will know about. So I choose small teams of people that are high quality, and I pay them well. Mm-hmm. And I tell them that when I employ them. I don't offer as little as I can. I offer as much as I can to the people I employ, but they know they're coming into a small team. They know they'll be stretched. We don't have big groups of people, multiple people having team meetings all the time. We have individuals making decisions in a flat management structure, as flat as possible, so that things are efficient and effective in a fast moving world.
Yeah, excellent. I like it. I pay them as much as I can. Awesome. That's good to hear.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I got offside with some of my colleagues in the industry early on in my tenure as a CEO, because there was a demand and supply issue in sport. A lot of people want to work in sports management. And so a lot of CEOs took the approach, well, I'll offer a baseline, and if someone doesn't want to take it, I know there's someone else waiting. I took the opposite approach. And of course, that got me offside with a lot of my colleagues, because they didn't like the fact that I was paying what I was prepared to pay for a good person, where they were paying, I guess, baseline because of the supply and demand issue. So I think it was a really critical decision at the time.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that, one is you pay them, but it's also how you treat them and how you get them to fly and be the best that they can be around that talent that they've got, which is what you'll attract. The other thing too is that I think the other way around was more of a scarcity model, where there's more of a growth mindset around, this is where we want to go, and let's get the right people on board to move things forward, which is good.
Yeah, and I think these COVID times, people have realized it's been really accelerated that if you've got a good person, you've got to keep hold of them because someone else is going to grab them. And, you've got to treat people with respect and look after them and not burn them.
Yep, fair enough. So this question here is about somebody that could be alive or from history. Who's your favorite leader and why?
Yeah, I reflected on this one a long time, and I've got to say you'll be disappointed in my answer, but it's that I don't focus on an individual. I focused on attributes of individuals, and I've got some names of people that came to mind when I was preparing for this podcast. But in reality, they are attributes of those people, not necessarily the whole. And in the end, what I look for is leaders who are prepared to develop, roll with, and implement change, but critically to see it through. And if there's one thing that irks me are these people that call themselves change managers, because I can identify change with you today on a whole lot of things, but if I'm not there to see it through, how true am I actually being to the change process? And so the leaders that I look up to are the people that see the future, implement the change required to be ahead of the curve, but also see it through in those first couple of years of change. I think that's really critical. And you see that in sports management in New Zealand a lot. I mean, you can always find fault in any organization, and that's the easiest thing we can all do. Let's face it, in my world, you read about it in the papers if someone thinks your organization isn't doing what it should be doing. But it's those people who can see forward and into the evolution of your organization, but also want to work in that space ahead of time.
Yeah, I reflect on what you're just saying there based on my experience with Hewlett-Packard, right? We had one CEO go, then we had a new CEO. Within 9 months, that one went. And so when the organization's in trouble, what do? Yep, that's right, you give it to a woman. And so we brought in Meg Whitman, who is the CEO. She came from eBay and she took over Hewlett-Packard. And we went through that change management. And going back to what you said, Simon, yes, she saw the vision, she saw the future. She put the organization, took the change. And most people thought, oh, yep. So after year 2, did she leave? Nope. She was there right through to year 6 or 7, I think. So she embedded it and made it to happen. And that was what was really, really fantastic and a big change, which is really great to see.
Yeah, it's a great example. And one of the things I look for in any leaders when I look from the outside is continuity and consistency, and who they are being as a person, but also the life cycle of an organization and the fit with the CEO or the general manager, whatever the title might be, is a really important part of that change process as well. So what does the organization need today? And where does that fit with the skill set of that leader? And, you come into, when I've been chairman of an organization, you might go through a phase where it needs a real marketing and innovation of approach. And you come into another organization and it needs, the marketing innovation's been done. The PR comms are great. We now need to knuckle down and get the systems and processes in line. So you look at your leaders with a skill set and the life cycle of the organization and where it's at. And so in my day-to-day job now at Rowing New Zealand, we're 132 years old this year. And that's pretty special. But what is the leadership required in that phase now that our athletes are professional athletes compared to even 10 years ago where they were semi-professional and 15 years ago where, they were just doing it for the love. So life cycles of organizations and skill sets of leaders is really critical, Mitch.
Given a brief introduction about your background, tell me more about your background if you'd like to share anything else, but in particular, tell us a little bit more about the DJ lessons.
Well, music was a huge part of my life growing up. And trust me, if I could have that as my career, or at least my second career, that's something I'm looking forward to. I'm a 4th generation Idahoan here in the United States, came from a middle-class background, spent a lot of my youth growing up singing, playing music, playing sports, keeping busy, and came from a family of educators where the global and lifelong learning is kind of part of everyday life. Was fortunate to live abroad at a young age in Denmark as an exchange student. And that really kind of shaped my trajectory about things I was interested in. And actually, after I went to university, joined HP and have had, new roles all over the company, all over the world, whether that was global business side, doing R&D and product portfolio, or out in front of customers in the US or in Asia or in Europe, talking about PCs and printers. And so I feel fortunate to be a global citizen and look, having had an opportunity to look across the company end to end from many different roles.
Yeah, impressive. And your background is very impressive and what you do and what you've done. So how did you get into leadership?
For me, it started back with sports, quite frankly. I played basketball and soccer growing up. I was not the superstar, up and down, but I was consistent. And what I loved about sports was there were playbooks. Things always changed. You had different teams you were playing. You may or may not get playing time. It was always a unique combination of skills depending on the year or the time. And so, spending a lot of time winning and losing and learning those different sides of things really shaped, I think, who I was then and what I wanted to become. I took steps in student leadership and other things over the years, coached then as I coached sports, especially basketball for, 20, 25 years on the side next to work, but so many synergies around being part of a team. And what shaped my philosophy is, 1 + 1 is, 3 or more.
Yep.
And getting that magic at the seams of kind of any given Sunday, something could happen. And I think that's where it really all started for me.
Yeah, when you mentioned the magic at the seams and you talked about before about winning and losing and how that shaped you, because for a lot of people, they just want to win. They just always want to win. But how important is that shaping of you as a leader, both by winning and losing? How's that helped you?
Yeah. Well, they say that things that shape us, it's not always the good, but it's usually how we persevere through the challenges, right? And so as you look at, losing, it's like, well, gosh, okay, we failed. What happened? Did we prepare enough? Did we have the right combination of people on the field, at the time? Did we get out trained or outpaced, by things? Were we surprised? And the great thing is, you can go back at a halftime in the locker room and you can regroup. You can have those conversations at the end of the game and fuel yourself into what can you change? Because sports is a transformational thing for everyone all the time. Even the great athletes in the world and the Olympic athletes, they're always looking to achieve or do more. And I think anyone can get better from where they're at. And so I think the good and the bad teach us things.
Yeah, and I think it's really important what you just said about halftime, which is great because you can actually regroup and then see where you're at and adjust. And then the other one was at the end of the actual game. I'm not sure. I know a lot of organizations do it and some leaders do it, but I don't know if enough leaders do a debrief, if I can put it that way, a way to sit down and do that. What's your thoughts about the importance of them actually doing that and what should they be doing around that?
Yeah. Anytime I've either conducted or been part of postmortem kind of discussions or things, it's a hugely valuable place to be. First, you want to create an environment where failure and trying things is okay, because obviously people don't want to hide. You don't want people and teams hiding behind, the green dashboard, but did we have hard enough goals to begin with, to stretch ourselves, but also just the space to create the conversation. So whether it's something bigger and more formal, sometimes on a cadence or a frequency, that's useful, but also even one-on-one. I like to do micro moment coaching. So, you finish a meeting or you finish a presentation or one of my team members finishes a big pitch, capturing right then and there about what worked and what maybe didn't work or what I should give them feedback on right away. It always feels more relevant than waiting, till the mid-year review or the annual review. Because number one, nobody likes surprises and they may have forgotten. But also it's if it's genuine and authentic and in the moment, it's when everyone's real in the time, right? To kind of learn and both receive the positive and or the constructive criticism too.
Yeah, and I like what you're saying about it being genuine and authentic, because I think that is really important. And in the moment, making it relevant. You're so right, because how many times we've seen whereby there's been performance management, good luck, see you in a year's time, and they go back in a year's time and people get these surprises. It's just silly. And so I think you're right. Right there in the moment, that's the best time to hit the iron where it's hot, get people to learn, great debrief and some learnings for people. So then they can improve for the next one, which is coming up, could be coming up next, which is good. Some good things there, right? And the micro moment coaching, I like that terminology. Yeah, very good. Anneliese, tell me, who is your favorite leader? Now, this person could be alive or from history. So who's your favorite leader and why?
Gosh, it's so hard to pick one. I'm sure people always tell you this all the time. One from history that I've been reading more about this last year, in fact, is Abraham Lincoln. obviously was responsible for the abolishment of slavery in the United States, even though some of those laws took some years to trickle down to everybody in the country. But this last year, spending a lot more time learning about some of the racial inequality that unfortunately still exists hundreds of years later here in the US in particular, but around the world. But Doris Kearns Goodwin is an author and has done these amazing leadership profiles over history, and learning about how he was one to work with people from different perspectives, not just his own party, people who did not agree with his point of view. How could he bring disparate groups together to make change? So there's a whole chapter about transformational leadership that I found quite inspiring and very applicable, quite frankly, to the times and challenges that we have now. One recent example, just to plug, Kara Golden, who is the CEO of Hint Water, is the other one that inspires me a lot, and I follow her. It's an amazing story about perseverance, where she had some health dynamics and different things where she wanted alternatives to Diet Coke. And she didn't know anything about the beverage industry. She didn't know anything about big volume businesses and things. She had a different kind of finance and consulting background. And she just knew she had to find a solution to a problem. And she knocked on doors and she found people. And she's built this entire company and brand off of a vision and a problem that she could solve without having expertise in the industry. So for me, stories of transformation and stories of perseverance are the ones that I get most excited about.
Yeah, excellent. You can tell it from your voice about the excitement that you're sharing there for sure. And I remember that you and I being in Singapore, there was an event, and I'm not sure whether you were one of the execs that I got to speak at it, but I think it may have been your boss, actually, Josh Binkle. Is that right?
Yeah, maybe.
And I had him to come in to speak and do a session, and he said, can you come and see me? I said, sure. So it was the day before. I went and saw him, and he goes, you know how we got this material? I went, yeah. He goes, I'd rather do something different. And I'm like, cool, tell me what you want to do. And they did the Invictus film, right? We talked about that, and how you're talking about Abraham Lincoln and about the racial inequalities and that. And then the South African, he goes, with them winning the Rugby World Cup, he goes, how do you feel about me using that? I went, do we have to? And he goes, why? And I went, I'm a Kiwi. We're the team in that film that lost.
We're the other one.
South Africa. And then he realized, but it was a great way of sharing about leadership and about different races, about how to bring a country together, what you're saying before about transformation. And I think it's just a great way of using that, right? So, yeah, it's good. And there are so many stories out there that show us things and so forth that we can learn a lot from those different stories.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Denis Giannoutsas. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.